What's up, Tiger fans? It's Morgan here, back again with another live show Thursday night. It's Thursday night. You know what that means, the Morgan Thomas Show, and we are back. It's been a long off season, but we're getting closer and closer to the start of college football. We have a ton of topics to talk about tonight. We're going to open the show introducing my good friend, Big Al, Alan Adams. We're going to talk Clemson football together. We're going to talk player insights, coaching philosophy, the upcoming scrimmage that's going to be this weekend, and some bad weather and some notes that we've seen from the practices this week. I know you are hyped about it, but let's get this show underway.
The Morgan Thomas Show.
Welcome back, Tiger fans, to another episode of The Morgan Thomas Show. I'm your host and producer, Morgan Thomas, and joining me by my side, my best friend, Big Al, Alan Adams. Welcome in, Big Al.
It's good to be here, man. We're getting a lot closer, man. When they start, getting the practices going here in fall, it really starts to hit home that, hey, we're close. We're just, over 3 weeks away here from kickoff, and what's brutal is we have to wait till Monday. We don't get to watch the game on Saturday like most of the country. We have to wait all the way till Monday. So a little bit over 3 weeks away, 3.5 weeks, but it's not too bad. It's getting close. All right. It's not February anymore. So that's good. We're on our way, but looking forward to seeing what the Tigers can do this year.
Thank you for reminding me that as a Clemson fan, you have to wait a couple of more days after everybody else gets started. I appreciate you, adding that to my attention. I had forgotten about that. And plus, It's on a weekday, Monday night. I had talked about this with a friend, flying out to Duke and going and being a part of that game, checking it out. I've been to Duke. I've been to the stadium. I've been to Cameron Indoor, but not during a Clemson game at all. So I've been there, but just, at another time during the off season. So the campus is obviously gorgeous, beautiful. The stadium, nothing like the Clemson Stadium, of course, but I was thinking about it. But Al, you fly out there. Let's say you fly. Let's say you don't drive. Let's say you got big money like big Mr. MT here. You fly out there, and it's nighttime, and then you're going to wake up in the morning and fly back, and it's a long flight, and you got to go back to work. I mean, I had to take 2 days off, even though I have like 350 hours of vacation. I still, I want to keep. I'm a hoarder of vacation, Big Al. So I don't know if I'll do that. I probably will watch the game at home, but you usually do a big nice setup for the away games. Are you thinking about doing a big nice setup this year?
So it's a tricky situation because, as you know, opening weekend, we're usually at the river, whitewater rafting. So we will be coming back that day or the night before. So there's potential for us to set up the big 6 by 16 foot screen out there, at Dad's house and whatnot. So it's a cool setup. We love seeing the Tigers on the big screen and the really big screen out there. So hopefully we can set that up a couple times this year. Duke may be it. Who knows?
I've been thinking about talking to you about going rafting again up in Ocoee River. The thing is, Big Al, I've been working out, okay, and I've been kind of like wanting to show this dad bod off to you, and go down the river, paddle in hand, showing off my ripped bicep, just like
that's right.
And the my shoulders, man, I've been doing a ton of, I saw this thing on Twitter where it's like a six variation. I sent it to you. It's different shoulder exercises. It's been working. I got to be honest. I mean, every time I look in the mirror, I'm shocked at how amazing I look, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. We can tell it's working.
I mean, you can tell, really, seriously. But, anyways, I appreciate everybody getting in. We got a ton of people already in watching, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you are, get in and be a part of the show. I think the best chat would probably be Facebook and YouTube. If you're on Twitter, I don't think I can see any of your chats, but if you get on Facebook or YouTube, I can definitely see your chats. If you're listening on a podcast or whatever, you won't be able to see the chat, but we'll try to give a shout out to everybody that's here with us. And let's start with our first shout out of the night and say hello to people who've gotten in. We've got John Sarian, Clemson Carson, Kevron Harris, Tiger Paul 1979, Joey Thomas. We've got TB, Orange 1973, and we got WB2DX also in the chat. So, hey, if you want to get a shout out tonight, make sure you get in the chat as well. And again, be a part of the show. So, whatever questions you have in there, we'll try to get to them as well. We got a ton of stuff to talk about, a ton of topics, Big Al, because again, it's fall camp, baby. I actually got offered today. I don't know if you listened to the Mickey Plyler show this morning, but Mickey was like, "Come on, man, let's go right after the show." Well, Al, during the show, it was like a monsoon happened. Like right about 7 o'clock, just like the bottom dropped out, as they say. And first time ever, Al, I'm sitting there, and thankfully, I guess they have like power backup, battery backup, generator backup, whatever. Things start blinking, beeping, whatever. Never lost connection on the radio. So, hey, it all worked out. But that's the first time I'd ever been a part of like a bad weather. But I was interested to see that, later on, I think around 9:30, Mickey had to just jump in the car and go. Like, I was just like, I'm going to go to work. I can't go to practice. I didn't take the day off. So I went to work. Mickey went to practice. It's on his way home anyways. But
Sure.
It looks like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it looks like they still practiced outside. They had pads, they had helmets, they were still out there. So obviously the weather wasn't too bad. The drainage system's got to be pretty nice down there in the football operations complex. But I'm excited to talk about practice. Obviously the bad weather today didn't stop practice, but there's a lot of notes out there. Al, I hope you've been kind of reading up on some of the notes from practice, because there's a ton of stuff to talk about. Before we get into each of our topics, though, let's look at some of the chat and see what people have said. Clemson Carson says, "What's up?" John Sarian says, "Notre Dame can go pound sand." I think a lot of ACC people agree with that too. John Sarian also says he likes the 80s dance music. That's synthwave for you. Clemson Carson says he'll be watching the Patriots preseason game too. Hey, by the way, tonight, Big Al, you got, I think, the Texans, the Patriots, and who else? You got the there's two teams left over at night. I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank here. I said it earlier.
No idea.
Las Vegas. I don't know. I'm just making it up. Kevron Harris gets in and says, "Hey, what's up, Big Al and Houston? Houston not here tonight. I don't know where he's disappeared. He's like Sting in the in the early 2000s and 90s. He might be up in the rafters somewhere. Who knows where Houston is?" TB gets in, says, "Listening from Asheville Tourist Baseball Stadium." That's pretty cool. Appreciate you, taking the time out there. Tiger Paul 1979 says, "You don't want to go out to Duke, Cameron Outdoor Stadium. You don't want to do that." And Orange 1973 gets in, talks about some of the rumors with FSU and Clemson and NIL. We'll get into the deep discussion. I'll hang on to some of those things as well. But let's get into the topics first, because, Al, we've obviously done a ton of preparation on all these topics. But before we topics, I did want to say, don't forget, over on YouTube, we have our 110% club. It's 99 cents a month. You get really cool badges and you get really cool emojis to use in the chat. I know you nerds out there love badges and emojis, so get in there and pay for our coffees and get you some badges and emojis. No kidding, you don't have to do that. I'm just saying, if you want to, you can. Also, I've started up a DraftKings fantasy league that we're going to really get into when college football starts around. We're going to have free games, we're going to have paid games, we're going to have all kinds of contests. So get in there and be a part of that. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. I guess you'd hit the heart button on Twitter, maybe. And then again, we'll be starting up the radio show soon. I've got the equipment needed to plug into the radio system and have it work. Al, this was like 50-50. And later on in the season, it became 0%. But I'm going to really try 100% this year, not only doing a live show on the radio, but also filming and live streaming as well at the same time. We shall see, though. We shall see. It has yet to be successful so far. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get into topic number one. And the first thing up, excuse me, as I get some water, because Al knows I talk too much. Topic one is Dabo Sweeney's coaching philosophy. Now, Dabo Sweeney's approach and how it shaped Clemson's program has been really, really great to see over the years. Al, I mean, we grew up. It's crazy to think this, Al. Our kids are not right now. They don't even know of a time when Clemson was not good. Okay,
Right.
and because of Dabo Sweeney, to be honest with you, he
Yeah.
really threw this program around, and he really focuses on team chemistry, team leadership, and having really strong competition, especially during the fall camp. And one thing that he mentioned personally during his press conference this week was the leadership role that Antonio Williams has played in helping build team chemistry and leadership amongst the team. Um, Let me ask you this, Al. Uh, why do you think Dabo Sweeney has been so successful? Looking back at all the years with Dabo and getting ready into 2023. And then also the second question is, how important is it to have someone like maybe like a sophomore Antonio Williams to be a guy that Dabo Sweeney's talking about as a leader?
Well, Dabo's been successful because he's Dabo. He's an infectious personality. His preparation is second to none. He has a vision, and he goes after it. He does all the steps to make sure that vision comes true. That's exactly what he did with Clemson football. And I mean, it's been a thing of beauty to watch unfold. And thank goodness we get to watch it. Hopefully for several more years, many more years. That's what made Clemson Clemson. Clemson is now special. Clemson was always a special place, but the world didn't know it until Dabo took over and really tried to accentuate all the values and all the cool things Clemson has to offer, and just made it kind of almost a niche type school. If you want those types of things, you got to go to Clemson. If you want those types of things and to win big in football, and that's what he did. And here we are. So that's it's a real cool deal. Love Dabo. We're unbelievably lucky to have him. As far as the leadership role, with Antonio Williams, I think it's a very big deal. I think it's a cool thing sometimes when you have a freshman come in and really make an impact like he made. I mean, he made a big impact. Now he had a lot of opportunity because the receivers were all hurt. They were not producing. He came in and really made people look as a freshman, and that's a big deal. And I know I think he even mentioned it in some of the practice notes today. He had a sour taste in his mouth because he fumbled, at the South Carolina game, and man, what a brutal fumble that was. I remember thinking, we're going to get this ball, we're going to go down and kick a field goal. We're going to break their hearts again, just like we always do. We've been killing them for years. They think they're going to sneak it out, and we're not going to let them. And sure enough, we get the fumble, and it was all over from there. But to come back from that, he's going to take that. He's going to use it as motivation. And, you need somebody like an Antonio Williams, a guy who comes in as a freshman, makes some good plays, has a little bit of a swagger to him. That's the kind of guy you're looking for in a leader. Christian Wilkins was a lot the same way. And I think he's gonna take on more of that role. Now, he's not quite the personality Christian Wilkins was, obviously, but just a little bit of swagger, tons of talent. Came out and played really well at a very high level his freshman year. And I think it's going to carry over into sophomore year and beyond. It's going to be very good for Clemson in general and the wide receiver room.
What I really like about Dabo Sweeney is just kind of where he came from, right? I mean, poor, had family problems, split family, right? Pelham, Alabama. We know the story. We've been Clemson fans for a long time, but, being a guy who was a walk-on at the wide receiver position. So he's been there. He's done that. He did it through a difficult path, really. And he did it at Alabama. At Alabama, one of the blue blood schools of college football, right? So he went and did it at his favorite school and in his home state, and then kind of stayed there and learned under guys like Gene Stallings and really kind of developed, I think, what he uses today to keep his team tough and focused and together too. But he made his own mix, and to me, he's very different than any other of the top coaches out there. We look at the top 5 coaches out there, like the Kirby Smart, the Nick Sabans, right? I don't know who else you could throw. Lincoln Riley. I feel like Dabo Sweeney is so much different than those guys, but in a good way. He separates himself in the brand of Clemson, and it really kind of just all work together and fit. Now, Al, when you go back and watch, a couple of weeks ago, I rewatched the video of him and the Dream Big statement, when he first got hired, man. I mean,
Yeah.
like that can bring a tear to your eye, just how impactful his words were and how thoughtful he was, even at a very, very young age. Becoming a head coach of a program that wanted to be great. And Al, you remember those times where he would say, everybody wanted to be like this team or that team or this university or that university. And Dabo Swinney said, no, I want those universities to want to be like us. And
Right.
he's still being so much different, especially in the time of NIL. He's not making it the number one thing, especially in the time of the transfer portal. He's not making that the number one thing. And he's still getting beat down and beat up about that. Also, in a time where society really doesn't care anything about God or anything like that, or following anything like that, or higher power or anything, really following anybody but themselves. Dabo still focuses on that, and it goes against the grain for sure. Developing players on and off the field, and the Paul Journey, program that they have, it really does separate. A lot of people talk about family, and I think every school has their own version of family, but Dabo Swinney definitely has built his version of family, and that's helped build that chemistry, keep everybody together, and grow leaders, even young leaders like you mentioned, like Antonio Williams, who's a sophomore. Now, to me, I think it's really good to see Antonio Williams come out and be that leader or start to take that role, because one, he's going to be here for quite some time. I mean, I feel like he's going to be here this year and next year. I don't think he'll leave as a junior. Hopefully not, maybe, but so you're talking about somebody that probably is going to have 3 years at Clemson, unless he just goes balling out under Garrett Riley. I mean, that could happen. But I mean, I could see Antonio Williams, sophomore, junior, and senior, continuing to be that leader. So the fact that he's already doing it now is a really good sign. And the fact that he led the team in I think, receptions and yards, right? He's a statistical leader, right? So he just can naturally fit in that role. So I think it's good for Clemson. And Al, you know how it is. You've done coaching. I've done coaching. You can only really go so far. When you're younger, you listen to your coach, but as you get older, you get closer in age to the coach that's on your team. You need those peers to be your coach, those peers to challenge you and bring that competition out. And honestly, Al, we'll get into it more, but we've been hearing a lot from camp right now that they're building that competition, they're building that camaraderie, and they're having a lot of excitement around the program as a whole. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here. Let's move on to topic number 2, segment number 3. But I wanted to get into some comments about Bo Collins. Now, he came out and he had some interview notes as well, and talked to the media. I think it's been great, honestly, to see. One thing that brought a smile to my face, Al, is the fact that Bo Collins sat down and the first question he was asked is, "Are you finally 100% healthy?" And he said, "Yes, sir. I am 100% healthy. I'm ready to go after it." How big is that? I mean, to me, that puts a smile on my face, because to me, that is very huge. Now, Al, I found this stat out here. Bo Collins led the team in touchdowns. He had 5 receiving touchdowns last year, but he didn't play a ton. Especially towards the end of the season, he was, and as he mentioned, he's been dealing with injuries since day one coming on campus. So this is literally the first year where he has said, legit, I'm 100%. So given that we have a small sample size, and he has shown that he can produce touchdowns, team leading touchdowns. I know, albeit in a situation where they weren't doing very well.
Sure.
Let's put that out there. We got to be fair, right?
Yep.
But how excited are you to know that this Bo Collins guy, this number 1 wide receiver guy, is actually 100% healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest keys for Clemson this whole season. And it's not just in the wide receiver room; that's in several positions. Health is going to matter in a big way. And before we ever get to a question about, hey, what are you looking for in camp, That's what I'm looking for everybody to stay healthy. Bo Collins in particular, the wide receiver room is one of the biggest question marks. They've been challenged these last couple of years, and it hasn't gone well for Clemson. And Clemson's not used to that. We've been dominating a wide receiver for quite some time, and we're trying to get back to wide receiver U. Bo Collins, I think Antonio Williams, Adam Randall, they're all going to be a big part of that. Can they be a big part of that? And a lot of that is health. We've seen a healthy Bo Collins as a freshman. He had several connections with DJ. He had a propensity to get open. I remember he led off a few games, where he'd get kind of separation on the back end, and DJ, believe it or not, would hit him with a touchdown pass, a long touchdown pass or something like that. So he's got the ability. I think in his freshman campaign, I think he had a little bit of an issue with drops at times. But I mean, that's to be expected from a freshman. Antonio Williams kind of had the same thing at the end of the year last year. So that's freshman mistakes. He's older. I know he's been putting in a ton of work, and he's going to be. It's funny enough. I actually ran into him. I took the youth group last night to formally spill the beans in Clemson. He was in line behind us, and he just looks good. He looks the part. And so hopefully these guys are going to be able to produce and get Clemson back to at least close to what we anticipate and what we expect at wide receiver university. We got to get back to there because we're not there right now. Plain and simple. I think right now that title's got to go to Ohio State or somebody like that. But we'd like to get back there. These guys are going to have to lead the charge, and Bo Collins is going to be a big part of that.
Now, Bo mentioned himself that he was dealing with a foot injury at one time. He was dealing with some, hip injury, wrist, shoulder on one side, shoulder on the other side. He's been going through top to bottom issues. Kind of feels like me now at 36. I posted about how, man, every day I wake up and something else is going wrong. 2 days ago, Al, my right big toe was like aching to where I needed to pop it. I felt like I needed to pop it, and I just could not pop my toe. I don't know if you've ever had that scenario, but I just felt like I would tell you that. Well, today, Al, I'm walking down the stairs, and my left knee is cracking like a box of rocks or something. It's like it's crackling and stuff. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, Al. If it's not one thing, it's the other.
Sure.
So, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's nice to see Bo Collins finally say he's 100%. And that's what Dabo Swinney also talks about is, hey, you can go two ways. You can check out, or you can use it and let it defeat you. Or you can, what does it say? Grind you up or shine you up, right? This world will grind you up or shine you up. Same thing with injuries. Like you can let it strengthen you and become a better player, and you can fight through it. And Al, it's got to be tough, man. This guy's from California, away from his family, and then he gets injured. He wants to make it to the NFL. He says he's going to make it to the NFL. But I feel like that he, at least from the way he's talking, he's used his injury and his lack of playing time and his struggles to help strengthen his determination to have a great 2023. And couple that with Garrett Riley, I think it's going to be big. Now, here's the thing, Al. I wanted to ask you this question. So I went and looked at Texas Christian's percentage of receptions for total yards, right? So do you expect when you look at Bo Collins, all right, as far as wide receiver receiving yards, all right, let's say that he was on TCU's team last year and he performed as well as TCU's team last year. So let's say Garrett Riley does the exact same that he did with TCU at Clemson this year. Do you think Bo Collins will be the number one wide receiver as far as receiving yards, or the number two, or maybe even the number three? What do you think?
That is a great question. I tend to think that he is probably going to be number one, and that's something I might not have said several weeks ago. Hearing all the positive reviews about Bo Collins, I still think if Clemson wants to be the Clemson of old, I think Adam Randall's got to become the alpha. And that doesn't necessarily mean he's getting the most yards. I'm just talking about jump ball threat, that type of thing. Antonio Williams, I think you got to think off the cuff that he gets the most receptions, but a lot of those you'd have to assume are underneath. I think Bo Collins is going to, be kind of more the receiver of those mid-range passes and those deep passes. I think he's going to have the best combination of receptions and yards per catch that would probably put him over the line as far as having the most receiving yards.
So if he's wide receiver number one, well, wide receiver number one for TCU last year, 1,069 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Mhm.
So you'll finally be back to a scenario where your number one wide receiver is over 1,000 yards. To me, is that not goal number one? I mean, getting back to that scenario where you're having at least one wide receiver get 1,000 yards. And then, Clemson got to a point, Big Al, where they were getting close to having two. I think Higgins and Ross got very close to having two.
Yeah. Yeah, they did for sure. And now, in fairness, those receivers, at least from what we had seen, were on a different level. There was a lot of deep jump ball situations, and they proved they could make those plays. So that's what we did, and a lot of those plays were long. And so we're going to have to wait and see if that's what happens with this receiver group. And look, you got Garrett Riley, who I think is going to spread the ball around, and that includes to the tight ends as well. So I think it's going to be difficult to get 1,000-yard receiver. Not to say it can't happen, but especially when you've got two running backs like Shipley and Maffa. I think a 1,000-yard receiver is going to be a difficult thing to do. Now, if you get it, that's a great sign that Clemson's doing really well. But my expectation would be maybe one, if not two, close to 1,000. But I don't think we get one over 1,000.
That's interesting take. I'd like to see what you have to say. Put it in the comments and let us know what you think. Is it possible for Clemson to get 1,000-yard receiver this year, or is it just not possible? Not because they don't have the firepower, not because they don't have the talent, but maybe because they have too many people to spread it around to. I'm curious to see what you think in the comments there. And we'll leave it at that, and we'll move on to the next thing because, we only got an hour show here. So we want to kind of get through our topics. Again, thank you for being a part of the show, listening and watching wherever you are, wherever you may be. Make sure you hit that like button to help out with the algorithm, and subscribe over onto our YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on all of our exclusive Clemson content we put out every single week. Now, here's the deal. I'm going to go back through. If you miss anything on this show, I'm going to go back through and do highlight clips as well as I normally do over the years. So that's why we kind of break it down like this, so that I can do some highlight clips as well. So don't forget to do that while you're subscribing, and check out the other clips out there as well. All right, next topic up on the list: freshman standouts and player development, specifically with freshman standouts. Al, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. I feel like you're going to be high on this young man. Chat, let me know what you think. Are you high on this young man as well? But I'm hearing good news from a guy from Greenville Senior High School, and that is Tyler Brown, wide receiver, who is a true freshman. Now, for me, I thought, well, Antonio Williams has that slot position. This guy's under 6 foot. I think he's like 5'11", right, Big Al? So, he's going to play that slot role. He is a very, very good route runner, and he has a very good burst in his routes. So I love what I saw from Tyler Brown in the highlights, and we're starting to hear some rumblings from the coaching staff and other people who are on location saying that he's becoming a very important piece in the offense. Now, maybe it could be all spring hype or fall hype here. Maybe it could be camp hype here. But do you feel like that with Garrett Riley, these freshman wide receivers, we'll start with Tyler Brown, but throw in Noble Johnson, throw in Hannafin, throw in Tink Kelly. Do you think that these freshman wide receivers really have an opportunity to make contributions as freshmen? I mean, there are guys in front of them that are now healthy. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think they can break into that maybe too deep? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I think so. I think Tyler Brown is an interesting case because, I mean, the assets are there, man. The quickness, the speed, it's unbelievable. We liked his film. We reviewed that a long time ago, from what I remember, and it's super impressive. That's what you want to see. It's what Clemson has been lacking for quite some time, and it's he's got a different gear than even in Antonio Williams, who's starting at that position. Now, Antonio Williams has got a lot of advantages over Tyler Brown, mainly the fact that he's been in the program for a year. He's bigger, he's stronger, he knows the system better and all that kind of stuff. So there's stuff that Tyler Brown's going to have to learn, and maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. That's kind of at the end of fall camp is kind of where we're going to start to see a lot of that, where Dabo says a lot of times they hit that wall, and we're going to see if Tyler Brown falls victim to that, or if he's able to push through and get everything kind of naturally. We'll see how it goes with him. And I worry a little bit about his weight. I'm pretty sure he checked in pretty low. I don't remember what it was for sure. But he's going to put on some pounds. That'll take him some time, but he'll do that. But I think he'll be able to carve out a niche role for sure. Maybe not as big as Williams was last year, but I think he will find a role, especially in certain situations, whether it be an in-game situation, whether it be on a punt return type situation or kickoff, whatever. I think you're going to hear Tyler Brown's name a little bit this year, and it's going to be just enough to whet the appetite of Tiger fans for him to really break out maybe next season.
While you're saying that here, I'm bringing it up to see 179, and he came in at 180. So, down 1 pound at 5'11. 5'11. That's I think good for his BMI. But Al, you would like to see him heavier than that?
Sure. Yeah. I'd like to see him. He said 179. Yeah. I'd like to see him put on a good 10, 15 pounds. Now that might take a little time, but and you can play it that way. It's not that you can't play. It's just that, you have a better chance of getting injured if you're a little bit smaller, kind of holding up over the course of a long season and a brutal season. So we'll see. Some people can be that small and be just fine. And I hope he's one of those guys, but yeah, I'm excited to see him on the field and give Clemson that speed element they've been lacking.
Well, I don't want you to gain too much weight and lose your speed, right? But
can't do that. Yep.
If you look at the receivers that are out there, I'm just kind of glancing at guys that aren't, walk-ons or reserve team or whatever. I'm glancing at the list here of the big weigh-in for 2023. And let's see. Tyler Brown, 179. Troy Stellato, 187. Clay Sweeney, 177. Cole Turner, 184. Antonio Williams, 195. So yeah, he's down there probably, as far as freshmen go. I mean, Hannafin, 212. He's more of a lacrosse kind of fit guy, right? And Noble Johnson, 210. Adam Randall, 224. Brandon Spector, 205. Yeah, so Al, you're right. On the list of wide receivers of guys that we expect to see, pretty regularly, he's still kind of down there with his weight. Now, I'm curious let me see where my son Kelly. Okay, Tink Kelly is at 181. So both of them kind of down there. Talking about those freshman standouts, we also heard a little bit about Tink Kelly, from Daniel High School. So this is another guy from the upstate. Now, what are your thoughts on him? Will he be able to carve out a role this season? Do you feel like maybe Tyler Brown and my son Tink Kelly could be special teams guys? Because they're shorter, they're 5'10, 5'11, they're lighter on weight, they're 179, 180. Maybe they're kick returners, maybe they're the speed guys in special teams.
Yeah, I have to see jury's still out on Tink Kelly for sure. A lot of people that I had talked to in high school, you see this on the message boards as well. People think his highest upside is a defensive back. But we're going to start him out at receiver and kind of see how things work there. And then, potentially move him, unless if he wants to, or if Clemson needs him to, or whatever it may be. And I'm not saying he can't make plays at receiver. I think he probably can. But is he going to be good enough to, overtake a spot so that he's getting enough playing time? I'm not really sure. I think this year it would be more reasonable to expect him to make an impact on special teams. But, I don't even think I went and watched Tink Kelly's film from what I remember. I did talk to a guy who has refereed some games who said that they think his upside's at defensive back as well. So I don't know what that may mean as a receiver. Maybe he has some drops issues. I'm not really sure how natural he is as a pass catcher. But I think he definitely has the potential to make an impact. I think he's a gamer, a playmaker. So Clemson could certainly use him. But my guess is this year you'll see him mostly on special teams.
Yeah, I am interested to see. Mickey got on to me about Al. You probably will get on to me about this too. But we were talking about the fact that I would leave a blowout game against a scrub school to go watch a softball game, and not just any softball game. The way he phrased it was, would you leave Clemson versus South Carolina State in a blowout to go see Clemson versus Oklahoma in softball?
Sure.
And I said, 1,000 times over, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a scrub team. You've already beat them versus Clemson playing the best team in the history of softball. and maybe or maybe not having a chance. I don't know. To me, I would leave that game and go see it. Now I know you and Mickey and others would probably not do that. And one thing that Mickey said to me is that you spend all this time watching film, talking about these young guys, and then you don't want to stay in the game and watch them when they finally get out there to play early.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
even though it's mop up duty, as they say. Al, is that what you look forward to, or is it just some arbitrary thing that you have to do that you've set in your mind? Hey, I've got to stay. Is it superstitious? Hey, I've got to stay, or is it like practical? Like, hey, I want to stay because I want to see the Tink Kellys of the world and what they can do when they get their shot.
I I would say it's more of a practical thing. I certainly want to stay. I mean, you spend all this time, you spend all this money, you spend all this effort into watching this team and watching the film for these guys, and analyzing everything and getting to the games and whatnot. And I want to spend absolutely every second I can in Death Valley. And I also think it's the mark of a true fan. I've always said I don't care if we're losing by 55 or winning by 55. Believe me, I was one of the only people in that stadium when we lost to Florida State at the beginning of that year, and they completely blew us out. We had national championship aspirations, and they completely annihilated us. Yeah, it was a brutal thing to do, but I was there, until all zero. So that's something I like. That's something I encourage people to do. Just any second in the Valley is a good second. So, and I did want to mention real quick. I see Walter Burt gets over here on the chat and says Devontae Smith from Alabama plays in the NFL at 6 foot, 170 pounds. You're right. Now, I will say he's probably more the exception than the rule, but it's like I said, some people can just do it. Some people, don't have to carry the weight. They can be just fine as long as you got the speed to get around people. Hey, it can't hurt if they can't get to you, right? So that's a definite, it's a great point, and that's one thing that I wanted to mention before we got out of here.
That is true. Thank you for getting in over on YouTube, Walter. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button on the video. If you're a Clemson fan, subscribe to the YouTube channel and support us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for getting in and being a part of the show. I know a lot of other things that you could be watching, and being a part of the show and listening to us is pretty cool to us. So we really appreciate that, especially with the NFL preseason going on right now. You got Houston 0, New England 3 in the top of the second quarter. And then this is the team that I forgot to mention earlier. So we'll do a error correction. How could I forget this? My guy, Kirk Cousins, and the Minnesota Vikings traveling to the Seattle Seahawks to see them play, or to play tonight at 10 o'clock on NFL Network. The other game right now, Houston at New England on the NFL Network as well. Preseason games, Al. Interested, not interested, could care less. What do you think?
Could care less. I don't even care about preseason games when the Packers are playing. I consider myself a Packers fan. I do like, by the way, how Tiger Paul 1979 gets in and says the Clemson softball game against a great opponent is more entertaining to me than a mop-up fourth quarter game of a blowout football game. I'm a fan of both teams. So, he's wrong about that. He closed beefs, wrong on both counts. Okay, disaster for Tiger Paul in 1979. Shame on him. He should know better.
Well, he's a season ticket holder for both. So, and been a gracious person to allow me to come to some of the games with some of his spare tickets. So I really appreciate him. But for sure,
we love Tiger Paul 1979.
If it's a best team in the century or in the decade, Oklahoma versus Clemson in softball, I got to tell you, man, I want to see that, especially mop-up duty in a football game. You could tell. I'll watch the highlights later on, and see those guys. Tiggs gets in, says Bills Raiders. I don't see the Bills Raiders on tonight. Maybe they're on this weekend. Maybe that's what you're looking for. Lightweight equals wiry, Tiggs also says. And now that we're about getting close to our final 15 minutes, Al, I'm going to go through the chat here. So he says lightweight equals wiry. I would say that about Devonta Smith. He is a wiry dude, that's for sure. Tiggs also seems to be a big Banks Pope fan. Now, I know Banks Pope had a monster game in the spring game. Do you really see him doing anything this season, or was that kind of like a good news story just for the spring?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's more of a good news story for the spring. It's not that he can't play. I mean, like you said, he was getting open in that spring game, making some good plays. I think Brenningstool is kind of going to be your guy there. I think he's going to kind of be the one you go to. I'm interested to see what Sage Ennis can bring to the table as well. I think Clemson's doing some really good recruiting at tight end now. And they got several on the way, so I think it's going to be a good year for the tight end. But it wouldn't surprise me to see his name pop up a couple of times. I have my doubts that it's to any great degree.
Hard time 3015 says hashtag bring back Houston. Houston's here. He's just in the rafters. I told you he's here. He's with us, even if it's in spirit. John Sarian says, I hope Tyler Brown is the primary returner. Keep Shipley safe and healthy. What do you think about that, Al? You feel like it's important to keep Shipley safe and healthy?
Well, yeah. I mean, because he's friggin' Will Shipley. So yeah, that's a very big deal. Now you do have Maffa there, so it's not. Again, I'm not concerned about running back depth when you have a 1-2 like Shipley and Maffa, but it is nice to be able to give each other a breather, contrast some styles, and have Garrett Riley something like that to work with. So, but yeah. Tyler Brown's what I was talking about. Maybe see him on special teams a good bit too. That's fine with me. As long as he's able to hold on to the ball, I'm all for it.
Bill Lanham gets in over on Facebook, and I appreciate that. Make sure you hit the like button over there and follow us over on the Facebook page. Great news that Dabo is loving the play of Tyler Brown and Tink Kelly. If they are good enough to impress now, just imagine what they will be after adding more muscle and skill. Tink Kelly is a terrific athlete and will be a great Tiger. Some good words there, some positive words and some encouraging words from not only Dabo, but from the fan base here as well. I got to say, these two guys, it'd be nice to see them do well in 2023. Although I got to be honest, I'm not expecting a ton. So anything that they do positive, I'm going to be super excited about for sure. Tiggs also gets in and says over on YouTube, I see Clemson having 2 running backs over 1,000 yards rushing. Is that really possible? I mean, Garrett Riley did not have that at TCU. 2 running backs, 1,000-yard rushing. So here's the deal. Let me go. We got to look at this here, Al. So if you go and you look at, say, the first team that comes to mind would be Michigan. Okay. And Michigan statistics on ESPN last year, very, very close. Blake Corum, 1,463 yards. Donovan Edwards, 991 yards. Man, they couldn't give him 9 yards. They couldn't give that man 9 more yards before the season was over. That is ridiculous. By the way, what's also ridiculous is Corum had 5.9 yards per carry and Edwards had 7.1 yards per carry. Crazy numbers.
Yeah.
To me, Al, do you think Clemson is set up for that, for 2 1,000-yard rushers a la Michigan last year?
That's a really tough bar, especially when the fans of the past few years have really complained about the offensive line's ability to run block. That's a high bar, but I will tell you this: with Shipley and Maffa and the way they're going to space out the running game a little bit with Garrett Riley's offense this year, I think it's going to be a huge step in the right direction. And I think it's far more likely you have 2 running backs hit 1,000 than 2 receivers.
Say that again. You said it's far more likely to have 2 1,000-yard rushers.
Yeah.
Than 2 1,000-yard receivers?
That's what I think.
That's hard to say. That's hard.
I know.
That is a really difficult question, and not really what I guess that is what Tiggs kind of said. Wasn't really a question. He was making a statement, really, over on the chat.
Right.
So I don't know. Hard Time gets in on the chat and says, "Hey, Morg, Riley didn't have Shipley or Maffa either at TCU," which is a good point. Which is a good point for sure. CJ gets in on our previous conversation and says, I will be concerned if Banks Pope is on the field for anything other than garbage time. Al, do you agree with that?
That's a trap question. You should know better than to even ask me that. Because again, all I'm going by, of course, everybody's going by the fact that nobody knows who Banks Pope is if it wasn't for the spring game. Okay.
Right.
But in the spring game, he looked just fine. So as long as he can go out there and catch a pass and get down on the ground, I don't really care if he's in there or not. As long as he's working his assignment, it's fine with me. But yeah, I think that would certainly be of a concern, if you hear his name prominently, because you haven't heard a lot from him so far, and he's not one of the ones who's expected to be a big playmaker this year. So I get it. I get where he's coming from.
Tiger Paw 1979 says, "You're welcome, Morgan Allen. You can have my seat in Death Valley for the remainder of the Charleston Southern game when the Tigers lead by 50." So we know at least one seat that will be empty when that happens, if that happens this season. So I appreciate that. Hey, you know what? That was generous. We got to give him a little golf clap.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's such a good guy.
Thank you for doing that, Al. I got some other questions in here. One thing that I wanted to go into was looking ahead, season expectations. This will be probably our last topic of the night. So the outlook for the upcoming season. Okay, this is kind of a broad, getting the fall camp started question, right? We like to do these kind of things. Al, what do you think as far as wins and losses go? Let me pull up the FBS, or let's see, Clemson FB schedules, I think is the website. We'll go 2023 football schedule. All right, so the 2023 football schedule. I should know this off the top of my head. I know I'm a terrible fan. Al, can you name the schedule in order off the top of your head?
No.
Come on, you can do it. You can try. Come on, try.
I know we play Duke first. That's about all.
You got Duke. What's the next one? You know the next one. Come on.
It's one game at a time, Morgan. Isn't that what it's supposed to be?
All right, Dabo. Come
one
on.
Game at a time.
Who is after Duke?
I don't know. Furman or somebody?
Al, come on. All right, it's Charleston Southern.
There you go.
Florida Atlantic. Okay. Then Florida State Seminoles.
Yeah.
And then
I knew they were fourth, but
do what?
I knew Florida State was fourth, but I knew there was two cream puff games in between, and then then Florida State. That's a big one. So, you're laughing at me for something. What'd I do?
No, moving on. At Syracuse, okay. Then Wake Forest, and then they're on a bye week, October 14th, and then at Miami. At North Carolina State, Notre Dame, they host Notre Dame this year. I'm going to go to that one for sure. Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets hosting North Carolina State or North Carolina Tar Heels. No North Carolina State this year. Yeah. I said
we played North Carolina State.
I'm all the way over. I'm all the way around here. And then finally finishing off the season at South Carolina. So going back to my original question before I got so rudely interrupted by my own thoughts.
Sure.
What do you feel like is success as far as wins and losses? That's obviously 12 games there. Wins and losses. What do you think?
It's a loaded question again, man. Because success to me is getting back where you belong in the playoffs. And you do that with an 11-1 season and winning the ACC championship. And I think you'd be just fine there. You'd really have to have some things break the right way if you were to go 10-2, and 10-2 is possible. With that schedule, Clemson, if you look on paper, maybe with the exception of Florida State, I guess, depending on who you ask, that Clemson should be favored in almost every game they play. They probably will be favored in every game because they play Florida State and Notre Dame at home. So they'll probably be favored in every game they play. But if you look at the past, however many seasons they've played, it's been the same story. But we always seem to either, lose one of those games or come really close to losing to a team we shouldn't. It just shows, how close things are in football and the parity in college football. And anybody can beat you on any given day. We struggle with Syracuse when Syracuse is terrible. That happens all the time to Clemson. So I think 10-2 would disappoint the fans in a major way, but it's a realistic possibility. I think Clemson's going to have to find a way to win one of those home games, whether it be Notre Dame or whether it be Florida State, and then take care of business in the ACC championship so that they can get to the playoff. And I think that's what they're going to have to do. I think anything else and the fans aren't going to be happy.
With this schedule, we already talked about the three most difficult games this season. For me, it's Florida State, Notre Dame, and South Carolina, not in that order. Some people would like to throw in Duke at the beginning of the season because they're going to be hyped up and ready. I get that. I really do. I don't disagree with that really at all. But I feel like Clemson should go into the Florida State game being undefeated, 3-0. I feel like that while national media wants us to believe that Florida State is going to win that game, it would be hard for me to feel like that Clemson could win with DJ and now all of a sudden lose, and then also lose at home while DJ won in Tallahassee. And I know they are adding a ton of transfer players. I get it.
Yeah.
So they have filled areas of need faster than probably Clemson has just because of the transfer portal. But you got to think they could very easily be one loss or no loss going into their bye week. That would be either 6-0 or 5-1. I
Hmm.
don't see them having difficulty in Miami or North Carolina State. So they could be 7-1 or 8-0, right? Notre Dame to me will be a difficult game. I
Yeah.
don't know what to expect from Sam Hartman. I know that they basically manhandled the defensive line last year, and that very much concerns me
Yeah.
because that was supposed to be a strength for Clemson last year. So
No
I don't
doubt.
know if Notre Dame's going to do that again, but if they do that again, that is going to be a scary game, especially at home. I would not want to leave that game at home walking away with an L. But to me, it's a toss up right now because of how bad they played last year. But
Sure.
again, the offense is completely revamped. So hard to say. I don't know, Al, if you wanted to add anything to that before I finish the last three, but
No, I agreed with you. I agree with you. I think when we went over our most difficult games, we were supposed to have our top three most difficult games on the show, and we never really got to it. And I think Notre Dame was my number one. I'm almost inclined to switch that to Florida State now, but they're 1-2, 1A, 1B. I think it's pretty indifferent. And Duke was my next in line. So there's some tough games for Clemson this year. But it's funny, you go through the schedule and you'll say, I don't see them having a problem at Miami. I don't see them having a problem at North Carolina State, and that may be true. But the first time we lost to Syracuse, did you see Clemson having a problem with Syracuse? No. Because on paper we're 10 times better. But I'm telling you, sometimes they just have a good game plan and they come out ready to play, and that's what happens.
yeah, that's the thing. And chat's getting in here and saying, hey, watch out for Syracuse. And that's what everybody said. Every Clemson fan, if you have a pulse, if you've been watching Clemson for the past 10 years during the Dabo Swinney era at least, you're going to say, watch out for that at Syracuse. Syracuse at home is not as bad, but at Syracuse, a lot of times can be very tricky. There's something about, I don't even know if they still call it this, but the Carrier Dome, I think it's the JMA Wireless Dome now. I'm just reading that. There's no way I knew that. I'm just reading that. It's the JMA Wireless Dome in Syracuse. So it's not the Carrier Dome, which I'm still going to call it the Carrier Dome. But either way, anytime where you have an at symbol before Syracuse as a Clemson fan kind of makes you a little bit nervous.
Sure.
And I understand that. I think that's very reasonable. But as far as the wins and losses and some looking ahead and season expectations, I do kind of agree with some people in the chat. Anything more than one loss is going to be like
Yeah, it will be.
I think that football is football. Anything can happen. You could still win the ACC with 2 losses. I don't know if you have enough respect to make it into the playoffs with 2 losses,
No.
but you probably do have enough respect to make it in the playoffs with 1.
Oh yeah,
Unless
no
that
doubt.
one is in the ACC championship game, then you probably don't. But
Yeah, then it's tricky. Then you have to have
yeah,
a lot of help there.
yeah. So that's my thoughts on the season expectations. Al, we'll wrap this up last minute here. Not final thoughts, but I'll just ask you this final season expectation thing off the top of your head. I know it's hard, but and let me know in the chat as well. Do you feel like is there any one player that the other teams, top to bottom, are going to have to circle as, hey, this is my nightmare player, and focus on that guy on the Clemson side of ball, whether it's offense or defense? You can give me one on both. But if you're
Okay.
thinking, if you're the opposing coach, who is the nightmare matchup player? Is there anybody that comes to mind that would be that nightmare matchup player for Clemson in 2023 offense and defense?
Well, I think off the cuff, you're going to have to say Will Shipley on offense. I mean, he's the most proven commodity there. He's a big playmaker. We've kind of seen what he has, and with the we talked about the more spacing that Garrett Riley intends to do in the running game. You don't want to give that guy a bunch of space, or he's gonna make a big gain. So I'd have to say Shipley on offense, and on defense, I think Barrett Carter's your guy.
Interesting. I wasn't going to say either one of those guys. Actually, I was going to say I would love the guy to be the matchup nightmare guy. I would love for it to be actually Cade Klubnik, because if
Me
he is
too.
that guy that is the dual threat guy that can control his scrambling tendencies and choose his moments of attack wisely, I think he's going to be a matchup nightmare. And I think it'll be great for Clemson's offense. On the defensive side of the ball, I don't think this is surprising, but Xavier Thomas, man. I mean, if he can be that matchup nightmare and be healthy for the entire season, watch out other teams, because it's going to be huge, huge, huge. All right, everybody. Well, hey, that's the end of the show. That's the Morgan Thomas Show. I appreciate everyone's love and support for getting in and being a part of the show. 1 hour show here on YouTube. If you haven't already, make sure you like the video and subscribe over on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at the Morgan T Show. Over on Facebook, we really appreciate it. Again, we're going to try to do this every single week. If you missed anything, we'll try to put out some highlights for you later on this week. But as always, Tiger fans, we hope you enjoyed this show. You enjoyed the discussion going into fall and what's more to come. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.